For this next part of the project, we're basically just going to take these images and titles here, and we're going to make it boxes going across the page. So we're going to go into our index.html file from last time, and our main.css file from last time as well. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, let's just, it's a little easier to read. All right, so we're going to come down here and we're really just going to change up this section a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a container and then a div. And we're going to call this container, we're going to give it an ID of column container. And then we're going to create 3 different post sections, one for each of the different images. And we're just going to give this a class of post. So yeah, just as a reminder, IDs you typically only use once, classes you use multiple times. So the container, we're only going to have one container, so we can use an ID. But the posts, we're going to have 3 posts, so we're going to use a class here, not an ID. And then we're going to take each one of these, get rid of the list. And we're going to put it within our div post. And for this, we're going to put it in an H2 header. And the image.source, we can probably just leave it as is for now and then just format that later. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to copy paste this over. It's on our list section. And can put this in our second div. And put this in another H2. And finally do the same thing with our last one. And get rid of that under list there. Do the same thing for the center H2. All right, so that should now put this into these different columns, and then we're going to have to go through and actually format it. So let's first check this, click refresh. Okay, so now it's in boxes, but it's not really formatted at all, so it doesn't really look like much. So now what we're going to go and do is actually format it. So I like to just keep the formatting kind of in line with how it shows up in the HTML file. So, oops. So as you can see, it starts off with the main, or starts off with a header. So header, header, and if you scroll down, there's a main, and then footer and footer. So this is going to be, this column container is going to be in between the main and the footer. So I'm just going to start formatting things here. So column container. And let's see, let's make this height 500 pixels, give it a little margin. All right, here's the trick. This container is going to use the flex. So this is going to be using the flex box. And then we're going to make this space between, that way everything is spaced out evenly. So this column container is going to allow each one of these posts within the column container div to have this flex layout. So it's going to size accordingly, and it's going to be spaced out evenly. And then I'm going to come in here, and for each of the posts that we just created, I'm going to give it a width of 30%. And let's get a little margin. Finally, align it to the center. And then that image, we're also going to want to format that. So let's give that a width of 100% and a height of, say, 90%. That way it actually fits within the boxes that we just created. All right, so let's give that a try, see what it looks like. Not bad, a little large, obviously, but not too bad overall. So we can adjust this if we want. Change this column to 400 pixels. All right, that looks a little bit more reasonable, but you get the idea. So now this flexes nicely, and it looks here like this is being cut off or cutting off the box just a little bit. So we can adjust that here by making this height, say 88. There we go. Now you can actually see the line here. Yeah, so that's basically it. And again, the key here, the trick with this one is you need to create a container, column container, that has this display flex property, and then this is space between. So yeah, if you notice the difference there, it just evened it out a little bit more. Before it was a little bit bunched up over here. This just centers it across. So this is the column container. So this contains each of the different posts and uses this display flex and the justify content to make it even across. And then this post class is the div within each of the column containers. So it has a width of 30%. That way, by putting a width of 30% and not specifying the number of pixels or some other fixed unit of measure, the 30% is what allows it to adjust accordingly as the website changes. So again, this can be really helpful for mobile formatting when we don't know exactly how big the page is going to be. But hopefully this wasn't too bad, and I will see you in the next lesson.